Okay, so today is the 14th day of 14th, 13th, 13th or 14th. What day is it?
Well,
it's Tuesday, so it's 14th.
Last night, so
it's 14th. Yeah, okay. So it's the 14th day of Tevis, the 14th of January, and Daf Yudaled Amud Aleph. So in chapter 4, page folio 14, side A. So we explained why this has to do with Dorei Dorot. Why Hashem's war with Amalek is from generation to generation. And he explained here that the generation to generation means that he attacks you on each transfer from world to world. And the idea of a transfer from world to world is, like we said, like in the person himself, between myself and my offspring. That's from one generation to another. That's, first of all, where it attacks, because again, I'm like the higher world relative to my children. So by me, there's understanding. I suppose I have some kind of understanding about what I'm doing, but the child can't understand what I'm doing. They only see my actions. They only see the habits. And that's where Amalek can attack. Because now we can say, well, even though there's an innate force of the mind controlling the heart, the brain controlling the heart, I will stop that from happening. And then the child is not educated. Because education in Hebrew, chinuch, means before you come to dat. Chinuch is before you're 13 years old. Right? Before you're 13 years old, you still do all the mitzvahs. There's a mitzvah of the father to be mechanech the son, to educate the child. It's not really to educate. Educate in the English means like to give information. Chinuch means to form, to adjust the person, to normalize him through actions. Doesn't matter whether he understands or not, because he's 3 years old, 4 years old, 5 years old, doesn't understand. Even when he's 10 years old, he still doesn't understand. I tell him, look, you should share your cookie with someone. The only thing he understands is that he's getting half a cookie. He doesn't understand why there might be something good. He can't even understand the merit of it yet. We think they understand, but they don't understand yet, because there's no yet divine soul that can challenge the premise of the animal soul that says the most important thing is to have the cookie. There's no other option. The option of sharing with someone else is not considered to be a competing claim on life. It's just either you have the whole cookie or somebody made you give up half of it. That's all it looks like. There's no
or you're
idea.
Praise for giving half.
Or you're getting something else. Or you're getting something else in exchange.
Right,
give him half the cookie, I'll give you this and that. Which is, by the way, how you do chinuch. You're supposed to do that. Why? Because a child can't yet understand. So why does he still do it? So it may be that I'm not giving him anything. He's doing it just because I'm forcing him. Because that's how chinuch is. And that's when Amalek attacks. And that's what we said, that's the falling apart of the passing of the heritage from generation to generation. Because what Amalek does is he doesn't allow the passage or the conquest of the mind over the heart. And then the heart does whatever it wants, and the mind can't tell it what to do. And so the person is left without any ability to control themselves. And that's what Amalek does. He severs the brain from the heart. And the natural tendency of the brain to control the heart is gone. And so the person, there's a famous story that when Reb Isaac of Homel was in some community for Purim, not for Purim, for Shabbos before Purim, Shabbat Zachor. So somebody saw how he reacted to the reading of Zachor. Right? Remember what Amalek did to you. For most people, this is like a mitzvah which has about as much excitement as getting a CT scan. Who cares? I'm not going to get all... Just let it happen. But Rebbe Isaac was full of hatred for Amalek. You could see it. He became red. He was like, he wanted to kill him. What are you talking about? There's no Amalek here. There's no this. Maybe today you have Amalek is the Arabs, the Arabs that live here. But back then, what are we talking about? Who are you talking about? It wasn't against the Ukrainians. It wasn't against the Russians. That's not what it was. And so there was a young chassid who saw him, and I don't remember his name, he became famous afterwards. And he said to him, "Where did you get such hatred for Amalek?" He asked him, how does one... I mean, this is a mitzvah that seems like some kind of historical artifact. What do you do with this? It's completely cold for most people. Yeah, you tap your feet because you're supposed to or something like that. But who cares? And he said, where I got it, you can't get it. He said this to him. He said, where I got my hatred for Amalek, you can't get it. But I can take you to the place from where you can get your own source. So he gave him two lessons here. One lesson is that this is an individual thing. Every person has to understand where Amalek is hurting him. Where do I not control myself? Because that's what Amalek is doing. He's severing my brain from my heart and making it impossible for me to control myself. So each person has his own cheshbon. He has his own score to settle with Amalek. So the reason why I hate him is not going to be the reason why you hate him. But I can take you to the place where I learned how to hate him, and you can get your own source there. What he meant was he took him then to Lubavitch, to the Alter Rebbe, and the Alter Rebbe it taught him what this is. What does it mean? Because most people don't understand. What does Amalek mean? Amalek means that I'm not a human. He takes away my humanity. He takes away my ability to act like a human being, to control myself. Why is that? What allows that to happen? He says, that's Amalek. And if you don't hate that, then it's just because you don't understand how dehumanizing this is. You don't fully comprehend what this means. Or you don't know how to associate it with Amalek. Amalek is no longer a nation. It's no longer anything like that. What is it? It's what severs your control over your heart.
Isms and things like that.
What?
The isms.
Right. It could be isms. It could be. It's whatever it is. Whatever it is, it could be an ism. But really.
But then, if not an ism, are we talking? I'm really saying philosophy.
Yeah.
Isn't it basically then breaking down into some krum philosophy or psychology that is coming to your mind?
Not necessarily, because it says he knows his master and he means to rebel against him. So I don't know if all these isms recognize God. He recognizes God, and he says, and nonetheless, I'm going to do whatever I want.
I understand what you're saying.
Okay, so.
Bring it to an example. I mean, it's ethereal to me. You're. I understand the concept, but in other words, you can say that depression severs your. I'm trying to get some.
It could be a depression, but it's not depression.
But it's not depression.
Depression would be more like what we said, the seven Canaanite nations.
Right.
In fact, the isms are more like the seven Canaanite nations.
Okay.
All the isms. They're like the seven Canaanite nations. Each one of them doesn't know God.
Yeah.
They're idolatrous.
Yeah.
They're worshiping something else, and okay. But if you fight them and you vanquish them, then it's fine. Here, Amalek is much more complex. Amalek is this state of mind where you come and you say, I have my own agenda. I'm not interested in your agenda, God. It's like the heart running rampant. That's why it's the only real enemy, because it's what's really taking over the heart. It's really giving freedom to the heart to do whatever it wants. So you're asking exactly what causes this today. The truth is that the week that we didn't.
In everything, not only Torah.
What caused
Yeah,
it
in
back
everything,
then?
in everything, right? That I don't want to get up on time for work. And it's the same thing that I don't eat what's good for me, and I eat what's not good for me.
You're talking about that general.
Okay, it's a general thing.
Okay.
Now, the issue is that the week we didn't learn, so I was reading, I tried to read in different places, different explanations for this very important mimer from the Alter Rebbe. The mimer is in Torah Or. There's two mimarim there where he discusses Amalek. And we talked a little bit about the historical side of it. We said that the historical side is that all of what the Alter Rebbe explains regarding the Beinoni is the state of the Israelites in the wilderness, in the Midbar. That we're now in Midbar Ha'amim. Midbar Ha'amim. Okay? That we're in the state of being in the wilderness like they were for 40 years. And it's the state that's between being in Egypt and between being redeemed completely and entering the land of Israel. We're in the state, in this middle state. That's why he calls it being a Beinoni, because you're in the middle. You're not in Egypt anymore. Faith is not going to get you through anymore. People are very, very bewildered by this, very confused by this. For 2,000 years, basically, faith got Jews through everything. Everything. Nobody could destroy Jewish heritage. It kept going. And then suddenly, faith is not enough for anything. Faith is simply not enough anymore. A lot of people say, I believe, I this, I that, but they don't practice what they say they believe in. They're not from. They don't do what Hashem told them to do. If you believe, so what do you believe in exactly? If you don't believe Hashem gave the Torah, what changed? 200 years ago, 100 years ago, your grandparents still believed that Hashem gave the Torah. They were obligated to do everything. What suddenly changed? Why you say, I have faith, and I believe He does, and yet it doesn't translate into anything. You live your own life, you do whatever you want. So what do you believe in? I don't understand. What is this, some kind of fairy tale? It's like a book I read. What is this? Is it serious or not serious? Faith doesn't work anymore because we're not in Egypt anymore. In Egypt, it was enough to keep us together. But in the wilderness, faith is not enough. You need Moshe Rabbeinu. You can't go out into the wilderness without a Moshe Rabbeinu. And Moshe Rabbeinu is Chassidus. That's exactly what it is. It's the Pashtuta de Moshe b'chol dara v'dara. It's the extension of Moses into every generation. And these generations are the generations of the wilderness of the nations, what Ezekiel calls in chapter 37. And it's a mid-state in between the complete Gullus. We're not completely anymore in Egypt, but we're not yet in the land of Israel. Believing in the land of Israel is that everything is clear. I talk about this a lot. That suddenly everybody will see that Hashem is everywhere. It's not like it's now. Now I can think about it. I can, in my mind's eye, see something. But I don't actually sense it yet. And then once you get into the state where everybody senses, everything changes. But in this middle state, you need a Moshe Rabbeinu. You need the Tanya. You need the Beinoni. You're a Beinoni now. So he calls it, Ezekiel calls it Midbar Ha'amim, the wilderness of the nations. And here he hinted to it, here in the Tzemach Tzedek hinted to it, that it's Omemot. Amim is not just nations. In Hebrew, Amim also comes from the word Omemot. Omemot is like embers that are glowing. Glowing is Omem. Amum, it's not a clear light, but it's not completely extinguished. It's something in the middle, it's glowing. What's the idea? He says that we have a feeling of being separate from God. When you have a feeling that you're separate from God, that's what it means to cut you off. That I feel separate, therefore I'm going to do whatever I want. It's the feeling of being separate. Meaning, Hashem is something, God is something, but I'm also something. We're both something. So my something is just as important as his something. So he said A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and I believe him that that's what he wants. I still believe, but I have my own agenda. Where did I get my own agenda? Because my head is cut off from my heart. Meaning, what I understand in my mind is not necessarily what I feel. I feel separate. Because I feel separate, I have my own agenda, I have my own needs. And so that's one explanation of what's cutting us off. What is this Amalek now? Okay. So that's the explanation. Now, in the same way that this is just an example from me to my children. It's also true in every stage of my development, that from one level to the next, there is a cutting off of the meaning. Let's give an example. That every day that we learn, we're like rising or going down, depending on how you look at it. We're bringing down new understanding, new belief. Let's say I believe what the Tzemach Tzedek says. Okay, so I learned this and I understand it and I comprehended it. I grasped it to my ability, and then I go home and everything's the same. It doesn't affect anything. Why not? Because at every level, Amalek can attack me. Even though I understand something, And my understanding is like I now have a new parent. I now have a new comprehension. Comprehension is Ima. Comprehension is my mother. I have a new insight, that's my father. I have a new father and mother. And they're trying to give me something. And I'm independent. I do whatever I want. It doesn't affect me. Why is it not affecting me, for Hashem's sake? Like in the end, I just learned something so meaningful. No, because I have my own agenda. I finish davening, I come back home. I have my agendas now. I'm not interested in what that said. So it's very, very hard to change it's very hard to carry through the understanding that I have into my heart and make it into something that affects my life. Okay, so that's the do. That's what he means here, from generation to generation, both in terms of generations, kipshuto, like literally, but also in myself. I live many generations every year. Because every time I have a new understanding, that's a new mother and father. That's my new intellect. And it has to come down into my heart. That's like the child here. And it doesn't come down because Amalek severs it in the middle. Okay? So we'll continue tomorrow.